I'm Linda Bluestein. I am a anesthesiologist and integrative pain management doctor and hypermobility MD. And it's great to see both of you.
With us today is Dr. Kat Hopkins, who is beloved by zillions of patients and for commitment to understanding mast cell, hypermobility, and all the intricacies of what it means to be human facing chronic challenging illness. And I'm very proud to be her colleague here at Minnesota Personalized Medicine.
Now for your intro. So Greg Plotnikoff, so he's medical director of the clinic that I'm working at, Minnesota Personalized Medicine. So complex chronic cares, Linda, you know, with your hypermobile patients, we have a fair population of that too, and the mast cell group. So Greg has been doing this for a couple of decades, but also with the functional medicine piece, just weaving in, you know, best of allopathic care and functional medicine, and as far as the integrative model, getting that all to meld. I mean, I think that's our goal, but I'm happy to be here, and I'm more than happy to be talking to you guys this morning. So, yeah.
This morning, we can report a lot of things which are very hopeful, and we also want to cover today things that people can do for themselves now, both for prevention as well as for treatment. And last week when Linda and I were talking, we addressed a number of natural products and approaches, talked about the importance of diet and of sleep, of community connections, all of which can be kind of challenged in a time of great stress and change. But I think this morning we kind of identified some additional natural products to be aware of. We talked about kind of dietary sources for those. And then sharing information about what is the latest on medication treatments, which are out there, and what looks really promising. A lot of excitement. And I think what isn't fascinating to watch science in a hyper speed, but we're all witnessing amazing coming together across the world. Linda, you'd mentioned about curcumin as maybe something people would want to talk about today. And what is curcumin and why should we be aware of it?
Are you doing liposomal curcumin, or do you just do the tablet, or does it?
I just do the tablet. I also share some recipes for making like a turmeric golden milk that you know can be another source, and you know, incorporating as much turmeric in food as possible. But I generally myself take the tablets or capsules and usually recommend that to patients.
Just a powerful antioxidant, but anti-inflammatory piece. Curcumin has been fabulous. Melatonin, I don't know if you guys talked about that the last time.
Go ahead and talk about melatonin. It's so important as part of the kind of approach to things.
Melatonin inhibiting NF-kappa B, binding to DNA in the nucleus. So really powerful antioxidant. And as we age, our levels drop pretty precipitously. So I have been using melatonin, you know, in my prednisone protocol with some of my cognitive patients, getting remarkable effects. But now I'm actually using it in some of my 20-year-olds, especially if they're healthcare workers, just for protective piece. And I go up slowly. I've been going up to 10 to 20 milligrams on people.
So the question is about melatonin is, yes, it's a very important hormone. And generally, production starts around 9 o'clock at night and peaks around midnight. It's really hard to be there if people are on kind of like weird sleep schedules. Do you dose it at 9 o'clock at night, or what would be the evidence for using it twice a day?
Well, it's not a superfectant, so it's not supposed to make you tired. It's just supposed to make the body think it's dark outside. And I haven't started dosing it twice a day on patients. I know that's talked about. One of the things that I've seen as a side effect, if people go up too quickly, is, you know, I'm up all night, I'm having crazy dreams. One guy, it's like, I can't handle it, so we had to back. Yeah. So I've used either liposomal melatonin, again, like a 1 milligram squirt under the tongue to build up slowly on people, or some of the brands out there have 1 milligram tablets, and I start at 3 milligrams and go up from there. Usually I say try to do it at the same time every night. If it's 9 o'clock, that'd be fantastic, but if it's 10 o'clock, it's still going to be helpful. And people generally describe more restorative sleep with that too. So it's a powerhouse. And
Kat, you mentioned liposomal curcumin. I guess, are either one of you using different doses for either the curcumin or melatonin if for prevention versus if someone is showing any signs of illness?
The challenge with curcumin is twofold. One is it's not very well absorbed. And so you have to get a form that for which there is evidence that it's absorbed. And oftentimes that's by use of adding black pepper to it that increases absorption. And liposomal may be another way. There are a variety of things which will convey to the consumer that absorption is actually possible with the product. The second concern with curcumin is that there's no dosing standards. So in general, I've been saying like 500 milligrams once or twice a day as being a reasonable thing. But, and I also tell people, don't expect miracles with it, but as part of an overall program, you can have reduced pain and reduced inflammatory markers. What's interesting is that from an East Asian perspective, curcumin is a very warming herb, and a lot of forms of pain are considered a cold condition. And so possibly adding ginger with it may also make sense. And I think particularly, I guess, if there's nausea or other GI issues that would be considered a, quote, cold condition. Linda, you mentioned about something really intrigued. You talked about a curcumin milk or curcumin drink that you're making. And Libby, I just have to add, before you talk about that, I just have to say, in Japan, I would go out with my buddies, and they love to drink, and I don't. And so the best way of kind of joining them is to actually have a curcumin cocktail. It was so bitter, it would take an entire night to drink. And, oh, it had built-in anti-hangover effects. So it was really good. But I'd much rather have kind of a curcumin milk or what. Tell us what you do with curcumin and mixing it.
So it's a recipe that I got from I think I can even pull it up here and share it on the screen. It's a recipe that I got from Dr. Heather Tick.
Turmeric golden milk. Hey.
So I got this recipe off of her website.
Flavor-wise, how is it?
It's okay. I drink a lot of like green tea with turmeric and a lot of other things.
The key point is that we're tempted, as we're in our pajamas and our pink fuzzy slippers, to kind of just lose structure in our day. That actually is kind of counterproductive in terms of melatonin production.
By having a set schedule, or you're working towards that you eat at a certain time, and it's not just the going to bed and getting up, right? Those other things also, they'll help your circadian clock so that your body starts to know that they can expect these things.
Now, without all of the plans of going here and there and whatnot, it's easier for people to get like, okay, we're resetting, get back into that piece. Because yes, like Greg was talking about, if you disrupt the circadian rhythm and you're not getting into the restorative phases of sleep, then what happens? Well, pain receptors, you're going to have increases there. So just that kind of spiraling. So it's so simple and so powerful at the same time. Several of my patients that have had issues with, not going to bed until 2 o'clock in the morning or whatever, when I put them with one of my nutritionist coaches, they'll start slowly working back. Like, okay, the screen has to come away from the face, you know,
Right.
2 hours ahead of the 9 o'clock bedtime, and just getting in those little pieces that you make these little steps and they're life changing. So now is the perfect time to start all of this.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Have either of you seen people fall into a state of depression in this quarantine phase, where with the loss of kind of like daily structure, like mood is declined? Oh, I can't leave the house. I can't do this. I'm only seeing people virtually.
I've heard, you know, why should I bother getting, I don't feel motivated to get out of bed, because instead of doing all of these fun things that I was doing before, or at least some fun things that I was doing before, I can't do any of those things. So a lot of these things have been taken away from me. So I totally agree with you, Kat, about it's the perfect time for self-care. I feel like for some people, they are able to make that transition, but other people, I think, are, you know, more experiencing the loss of things that they want to be able to do, and are really having difficulty with that.
But the families I've taken care of too, they are finally spending time together, and they're eating meals again together. So I've had a lot of people looking forward to that. Just, we don't have to go to softball, we don't have to go to all of these different things right now. You know, one of the families who they are involved in a ton of stuff, went out to Lake Elmo area and spent like 2 hours hiking together. They haven't done that in years. And you know, he did preface it with, we had to leave because we were going to kill each other, but it was a beautiful experience in the end. Like I've said to several patients, you know, in this time of isolation, I have never seen more connection between people, between neighbors leaving gifts for other people, between, you know, friends calling people that they haven't talked to in years. I mean, that's what I keep seeing. But let's look at the amazing things we have going on right now. Like, it's time to take care of yourself. So
Time to exercise, or time to do something that's going to structure time, and something to look forward to as well. So we've talked about curcumin and melatonin, and focusing on structured time and sleep quality. What are some other things which people can do for themselves? Don't let this crisis go to waste.
Linda, do you tell your patients to do Tai Chi or Qigong or any
Oh,
of that?
definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
That's one of the things that I've also been doing during this time, is a Qigong practice every morning, and try to do it multiple times a day. But just that's, I think, helped not just my immune system and my well-being, but also getting the energy moving again too has been big. So that's another kind of preventative piece I've been having people do.
Actually, Kat, getting energy moving is a really important concept. Is there something you can show on the screen here? Can you walk us through how to do something?
So yes, and so one of the first things you do is you stand up. I'm not going to stand up because then you're going to see my yoga pants. I'm dressed up.
You're wearing pants, so.
Yes. I'm like the news reporter in flip-flops right now. But standing up and just starting to move the energy like that. And then, you know, one of the people actually that Greg and I work with, she's big into her rebounder trampoline. So get on that and just start moving. It also is really good for lymphatic flow. As far as working on the head, there's some tapping movements you do on the head, at the elbows, at the knees. I am not trained in Qigong. I just practice it with someone who's good at it.
Are you doing this with a video, or have you done
the one that I've just finished, it was on day 30. It was actually live. So it's recorded on the website. You can go to the website now and participate in it, but it's a live session at 8 a.m.
Okay.
In the morning, and then I'll go back and do it by myself later too.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, because the fear response, which is what the media wants us to do, is so bad for the immune system. And love is the opposite of fear, right? And so when we see things like this, and that helps us to quell that fear response, it really helps our immune system also. Just, seeing people do things like that. So that's fantastic.
Yes. Along that line, then maybe I can share an exercise here. that, but like yoga, it involves coordination of breathing and movement. But unlike yoga, it involves release of a deep guttural sound, which is kind of fun, kind of like not a primal scream, but just kind of release out. Actually, I think I can demonstrate it. So what I tell people is to kind of get grounded, so you feel kind of in a sports pose, that your feet are grounded, your knees slightly bent, and kind of getting into a rhythmic pattern of breathing, feeling cool air come in through the nose, holding slightly, exhaling through the mouth, getting into a pattern of sensation and rhythm. And with breathing in and then lowering the knees, releasing breath. The lungs are empty, turning the palms up, and then inhaling, holding breath, bending to side, and here it comes, poof! Breathing in,
love that.
And breathing out. And then moving to the other side. Okay. I'm turning my palms up, breathing in, holding, bending to side, and poof! Breathing in and breathing out. I find in clinic this is really helpful for a couple of things. One is it does get energy moving and flow is good. I tell people, actually, much better to drink from a flowing stream than from a stagnant pond. Flow is good. If tears come, that's good. Flow is good. We don't want to suppress flow. The second thing is, I see a lot of people who are deeply empathic, and they feel the pain of the environment, they feel the pain of the world, and they bring it in, and that's good. We need more empathy in this world. The challenge is if we hold on to it. I said we need to send it on its way. And so, particularly if someone has shared something very traumatic or things have kind of bubbled to the surface, I say, okay, I will often stop a visit and we'll do this exercise to send it on its way. And it's kind of it's a reset button of sorts. But this is actually an energizing maneuver. And so good flow, good energy, send things on their way.
I love that. We all take care of more bendy people than the average person. And there's a lot of data that shows that people who are more bendy, people who are hypermobile, have increased interoception. So exactly what you just said, more empathetic. They're taking a lot of things in. They're very aware of things in the environment, and they are more likely to have anxiety. And so I really, really love that exercise. I feel like that's so beneficial in so many ways. Psychologically, letting things go. The movement is going to be so beneficial for fascia, which we used to think was such a passive thing, but now we know it's not. It has lots of nerve endings. So that's fantastic because that's going to get the fascia moving in a nice, gentle way. Because a lot of people who have connective tissue disorders or who are bendy, they have kinesiophobia. So they're afraid to move. So doing a gentle movement like that allows them to, they can start smaller and then make it bigger as they feel more safe with it. And so that's, because a lot of times they say, I can't exercise. Well, just because you can't go do the treadmill for an hour doesn't mean that you shouldn't be moving in some capacity. That's really good for our connective tissue. When we move and we stretch gently to the right range, that actually strengthens our connective tissue.
Well, as an osteopath, what I'll tell people as far as fascia goes, as I say, it's kind of like chicken skin. It's kind of like, imagine that if you have a sweater on and I pull it here, you're not just going to have issues here. We're going to have stretching all along that tissue too. So that fascial distortion model, I agree with you, that needs to be working. And the other exercise I really like to start people on slow is the sunrise salutation in yoga. I mean, you can go online and Google it, but you can do a really modified version of that. And that's supposed to be stretching all of the muscle systems in the body. I read this book called The Mucusless Diet. It's written by like a naturopath 100 years ago. And he starts with it saying all disease is constipation. And I'm like, well, that's a bold statement. And then I'm like, no, I do agree with that. It's that holding on, that not allowing the flow. But it's the movement, it's the emotional processing, it's all of that. And maybe some of those things aren't being talked about right now with COVID prevention, but it's all part of the care. It's like we all have to keep moving. We have to process the fear, we have to process the love that's coming in. And yeah, so I love the idea of just start with a little movement. We're not frozen in this.
In traditional East Asian thought, pain is understood to be blocked flow. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons why acupuncture and moxa and are used, is because it's to open up flow.
The placebo effect and the opposite of the placebo effect, the nocebo effect, are super powerful. So if someone goes in for acupuncture and understands what the purpose of it is, why the science behind it, and it could be anything. It doesn't have to be acupuncture, but as Kat said, like Qigong or yoga or something like that, the more you believe that it's going to work, the more likely it is to work. And they've done some really fascinating studies with medications and showing that if you tell someone this is a $2 medication versus if you tell them it is a $7 medication, they are more likely to get relief with the $7 medication. So our minds, our expectations are hugely, hugely important. So if we tell ourselves that, no, this is going to help, I am going to, get better. It's going to take time, but I am going to feel better. Then you really can make progress.
Are there any other supplements that people should know about, or it's kind of on the radar that we should be considering?
Well, I would love to hear both of your thoughts on vitamin D, especially because there are some people that have come out and said that perhaps vitamin D should be stopped once someone has become sick.
I'm going to defer to Greg, who used to be known as Mr. Vitamin D, on this one, because there's a lot of passion around it. So I think you should take this one, Greg.
Okay, well, thank you, Kat. I obsess about vitamin D because it's truly the single most cost-effective medical intervention we have in the United States, and sadly, a large percentage of us are quite low in vitamin D, at least judging by CDC reports and measurements. And it's even more so, the darker our skin, the more likely we are to have significantly lower vitamin D levels, because the darker our skin, the more sun we need to make vitamin D. And oh gosh, a lot of America, you can't make vitamin D for a huge percentage of the year. Here in Minnesota, you can only make vitamin D between tax day, April 15th, and early September, Labor Day, between the hours of 10 and 3. If you're outside on a day where you have a shadow, you're not wearing sunscreen, you're not wearing clothing, and not behind glass. And so for people working long hours indoors, it's just possible to completely miss out on the opportunity to get this very important hormone, not a vitamin at all, but a hormone for us. So here in Minnesota, we recommend that people be on vitamin D actually year round. And dosing is not so much important as it is the actual blood levels. But at this time, people aren't going to be getting blood levels. So a reasonable dose for an adult between, let's say, 100 and 125 pounds would be at least 3,000 a day, and above that, 5,000 a day is a very good dose. When the all clear signal is given and people can get blood levels checked, that would be very reasonable. Aiming for a blood level between 40 and 60 is very fair and levels. But Linda, your question was, should we actually be stopping vitamin D? And that came out of the University of Arizona, and the interpretation, even their own statement said, well, evidence for that is very weak, but our preference is to do little rather than do too much. And so that was an interpretation. But every other authoritative body on the planet, including the Vitamin D Council, has said absolutely not. You don't stop vitamin D. Actually, if you're becoming ill, you double or triple your dose, or go significantly higher in the dose. No one has perfect guidance on that. But vitamin D has so many anti-inflammatory activities, so many. The lower the vitamin D, the higher the risk of ICU admission. My concern is we need to be ensuring that people have really superb vitamin D levels at the time of illness. So the general recommendation is daily dosing, but if becoming ill, then at least doubling the dose for 5 days. Back in Japan, I lived across the street from GK Medical School, and one of my neighbors was a professor there, and we talked about vitamin D, and he ended up doing a randomized controlled trial of vitamin D in influenza, and demonstrating that actually the lower the vitamin D, the higher the risk of influenza acquisition. And that's now been part of a kind of worldwide kind of recognition that actually it's important for influenza to have good vitamin D levels. And so every winter, for sure, people should be getting good vitamin D.
And elderberry was another thing. What do you think about elderberry?
I use it all the time just as preventative. And the kind of arguments I've heard with the cytokine storm and elderberry, I wouldn't be using elderberry if someone was having an active cytokine storm, but do I use it throughout flu season and whatnot and have great results in my own, 3-year-old and my patients? Absolutely. It's one of those comments that I'm not even sure where it came from, and it was odd. I know that elderberry, as far as popularity, has really been gaining momentum.
And what about medicinal mushrooms? Those are also have immune stimulatory activities, and it's not clear to me immune stimulation equals cytokine storm.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. What are you doing in terms of medicinal mushrooms? That's a good point.
Well, I actually like medicinal mushrooms for prevention. For treatment, it may be a whole different story, like elderberry. Mm-hmm. If despite prevention, one becomes ill, one would maybe continue it. But the biggest concern is if you become really ill, then focusing on medicinal mushrooms is not going to be the answer. Well, perhaps the most medicinal of the mushrooms actually aren't really culinary, but shiitake and maitake are delicious, absolutely delicious. And so if you can get good organic forms of those, if the grocery store would have those, that would be really good. And I encourage people to explore cooking with those. So this beautiful slide is from the April 9th edition of the Journal of the American Medical Association. And it is showing where the science is right now. There are over 350 clinical trials ongoing across the world to understand how best to treat the COVID-19. And if we start in the upper left-hand corner, you see the spiky virus binding to a host cell. Exciting news from yesterday was a clinical trial on this camostat mesylate is actually preventing viral cell entry. This is a prescription drug that is widely used in Japan as for treating pancreatic inflammation. And lo and behold, it appears to be really helpful. little bit further, right underneath that, you see the hydroxychloroquine. That is the subject of a lot of research for both prevention and treatment. A lot of clinical trials on that because one, it's inexpensive, and two, it has a very good safety profile. So that's really cool. Further down the road in the lower right-hand corner, another clinical trial was published this morning on the drug favipiravir, which is an anti-influenza medication, again used and produced in Japan. Chinese clinical trials showed that for early COVID-19 and moderate COVID-19, very effective at reducing severity. And then at the top of the page, the MABs, the biologics, binding IL-6 receptor, in the top middle of the page. These are being used for people in the most severe situations where they're in a kind of cytokine storm, and this is a way of kind of stopping that non-resolving detrimental pro-inflammatory loop. We call it the cytokine storm. It's been really helpful. So I think that the good news is a lot of good thought is going into this all over the world. There's an exciting rush to get data out there to guide people. And there's no shortage of people who can participate in these clinical trials. Not to mention here are a couple other ones, ivermectin, disulfiram, and epsilon, which appear an article just published this weekend in the journal Nature, so one of the top journals in the world, demonstrate a review of 10,000 medications, high throughput screening to see which of these 10,000 medications might be effective against coronavirus replication. And 6 were identified to be strong inhibitors, including the already existing disulfiram, which is frequently being used to treat Lyme disease, as well as epsilon, which has been engaged in a number of clinical trials. And of interest, I know both of you are using a lot of NAC and a lot of glutathione in your practices. Epsilon's really interesting because it's a glutathione peroxidase mimic. And so the idea about supporting glutathione production and levels, either by NAC orally or oral liposomal glutathione, appears to make good sense. And so with the onset of illness, I think that would be very reasonable to do. I think this idea about repurposed medications are really exciting now.
Right.
So ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, disulfiram, naltrexone.
Low-dose naltrexone is so interesting because it's beneficial for autoimmune conditions and also helps with immunity. So it is quite an interesting drug.
Yes, I think this idea about repurposed medications are really exciting now.
Right, right.
We're like the Apollo 13 50 years ago, when in a crisis, we can find the duct tape and find some things to make it work.
Right. Well, and whether it's Kat's Qigong or your flow exercise, those are also getting back to basics, right? And really just focusing on, those things that we can control individually. There's a lot that we can control. There's a lot that we can control.
Yep, fundamentals first, then pharmaceuticals.
Right, right, absolutely, absolutely.
I think that's a beautiful conclusion to our
Yes, that's a great thought to end on. It was so great to chat with both of you. Thank you so much.
It's good to see you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. All right. Well, stay well and stay strong.